everyone. Thank you very much and welcome to our Learn and Earn with Crypto KOL series. And today we're honored to have our guest, Michael Creadon. He is the president of Invenium and also the CEO of Accumulate Network Program. So let's start, Michael. And this morning I see BitGo just trying to break through the 60,000 landmark and go Bitcoin. What's your opinion on that?
Well, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be with you. I think it's late Friday night for you, so you never stop working, but great to be with you, Ben. Yeah, the Bitcoin train keeps rolling, right? And apparently the Securities and Exchange Commission, or SEC, here in the United States is going to finally allow ETFs to trade. So I just wrote something about it, and I know a lot more about futures because I live in Chicago, and so I traded futures for a very long time. But I've never really traded a lot of ETFs actually, but I assume that with ETFs, it allow investors to be both long or short, pretty easily, which is great because getting short Bitcoin or hedging it has always been kind of a challenge, right? I mean, it's kind of a long only market unless you use futures and options, which are harder to get access to sometimes. But I think the ETF story is a great democratization of this asset class. It'll give a lot more, millions and millions of people access to this product, and it's a big deal. But maybe that's driving Bitcoin higher, maybe not, we don't know. But Bitcoin's almost at 60,000.
Yeah, exactly. And once it breaks through the previous higher highs, we may see something very exciting going on. And also, I would say this with this ETF coming, it's becoming so mainstream, it's becoming accepted either as a commodity or kind of like a currency by institutions. So there is no going back. There is no going back. So
I agree with that. Everything you said there, I think is interesting. First of all, I've always looked at it as a currency, but labels are important, especially for regulators. And in this country, we call it a commodity from a regulatory standpoint. So the CFTC regulates it. Now, of course, with the ETFs, that'll be more regulation from the SEC, I believe, would regulate that. But yeah, I think it's very much a currency. I mean, people use it to transact, to send each other money. And it's a part of the global economy. I also agree with what you said that, at least in theory, when you make new highs, or if you make new highs, there tends to be, some, what they call a blow off top, where it could just run. We'll see. I don't know. I mean, I think there's no question the last 5 years, there's become a lot more hedge funds and professional traders in the space. And in that regard, people know how to protect that, and there's options markets. And so I really have no opinion either way, but at least historically, when we've made new highs in Bitcoin, there have been instances where there've been giant spikes, but who can say? I think as a separate point, you have the Bitcoin narrative, which is amazing and incredible, but you've also got the blockchain narrative, which is kind of a different story. It's very similar, but they're solving different problems. And whether you look at Ethereum or Solana or Avalanche or Terra or Cosmos or so many of these top coins, these are blockchain protocols. And what is, that's about it, trying to build trust between economic actors. And so, we continue to think blockchain is an area of extreme growth in the global economy because it solves important problems. And so, our company DeFi Devs is basically a large sponsor of the Accumulate protocol. But you said I'm CEO of Accumulate, which is not technically true because the protocol, there's no CEO for a protocol. So, but anyway, I think that the sentiment is right. So.
That's wonderful because with all the institutional adoption and Bitcoin as a storage of value, what I'm actually more interested in is also all the layer 1 and the layer 2s, especially we are building the internet of the money and all that network transactions going on Ethereum and all other networks, and all those layer one that you have commented, very interesting as well. And I have read your Accumulate protocol, fascinating when you are comparing it with the other layer two protocols. So could you give us an idea about what it is and what's so unique about it?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And you know, my colleague Paul Snow would be much better in that area because he's our lead developer and sort of evangelist, and so to speak. But when I met Paul, I asked him a simple question. I said, why does the world need another protocol? Why do there's already 5,000 blockchains, or maybe 50,000? I have no idea. There's so many. And he said, well, I just see problems that need to be solved and no one else is solving them. So I'm just going to try to take a crack at it myself, you know? And I think that there's probably many things that Paul and the team are trying to build that are unique. But one of them certainly, as you touched upon, is this issue of interoperability. And you know, and I think that Paul, you know, we see ourselves not as a competitor to any other chain or Accumulate as a competitor, but as a friendly ally, for lack of a better description, where we can be bridges between different protocols, you know, and back and forth, and this data layer between various protocols. I'll just give you an example. And you know, I was chasing the NFT craze about a month ago, and I said, I'm going to go on OpenSea and buy an NFT. I was so excited. I had I had a little bit of Ethereum lying around. Not much, actually. And so I said, okay, this is a $50 NFT. I'll buy it. This is going to be great. And then it said the transaction costs were going to be like $1,800 to send. And I just said, this is just crazy. This is absurd. I mean, even for a $1 NFT, it was like $900 to send. And it just made me realize, like, I mean, Ethereum is an unbelievable protocol, but when the network is clogged, it becomes it's unsustainable. You can't do transactions on that protocol. That's not a problem. That problem has to get solved. And you know, it just has, you know, the transaction fee has to be solved. And we think Accumulate has a solution for that, but also the ability to move data between chains it's just so important. You know, I just have this image in my mind of like a one-lane highway. You know, Ethereum's a one-lane highway, Solana's a one-lane highway, Avalanche is a one-lane highway. And not to be critical of any of them, but how do you build on-ramps between these chains? I think that's in Paul's mind, and maybe let me just be clear, maybe I'm not describing it exactly right, but in Paul's mind, the way he lays it out to me, and I think the papers we've written, he says, look, there's going to be a world where there's easy accessibility between the protocols and the networks, and that's extremely important. And so that's certainly one of the key features. But another one that's just massively important is this issue of identity. Paul looks at the blockchain and says, why is everything anonymous? Why do you have these 64 hash codes and you don't know who you're sending money to and where it's coming from? Like that's just foreign. I mean, we live in a society. When you walk into a store and you use your credit card, I mean, they know who's buying the stuff. And he's like, the blockchain's world is going to change. If people want anonymity, fine, you can use Zcash. But if you don't want anonymity and you want to know who your counterparties are, identity really matters. And so he's like, look, the organization of the blockchain universe is going to look more like how URLs and the websites are used. So, you know, everybody has an independent URL, and you guys have your website, Tie-Dye Sun, and people can come find out, and they know what website they're on. He sees the organization of the blockchain universe in a similar fashion. And to him, that's one of the biggest outliers of why blockchain is still sort of this anonymous, I don't want to say secretive, but you know, you don't really know who you're dealing with. He says that those days are going to be over. As you know, both in Asia and in China and in Hong Kong and the United States, the regulators want to know who's participating in these transactions. They have to. You know, in this country, I mean, many people, including Mark Cuban, were saying, look, AML, KYC, anti-money laundering, know your client is huge moving forward with blockchain. And that's where identity, you know, it says, look, this is going to matter, you know. So And again, there's other features. As I said, the transaction fee issue is a big one. I mean, we think this protocol, we're certain this protocol is extremely fast, but speed in technology is sometimes a commodity. I mean, we know we have one of the fastest blockchains in the world, but we think that over time, other blockchains will be faster. But these issues of interoperability, identity, reasonable transaction costs or cheap transaction costs, those are things that are going to, sort of stand the test of time.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much for the detailed explanation. And I think that's the real differentiator from yours and the Polygonmatic and other layer 2 protocols, because you emphasize on bringing transparency and also the identity in this blockchain world. 本期节目告一段落，我们下期再见。希望您来3连赞、点赞、订阅、关注我们的 Facebook 频道。